you have your Bibles, turn to the book of Esther, the fourth chapter, verse 14. Esther, the fourth chapter, pardon me, verse 14. The book of Esther, the fourth chapter, verse 14. The New Living Translation says, "If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this?" The title of today's message is "If It Wasn't For, If It Wasn't For, If It Wasn't For, If It Wasn't For, If It Wasn't For." So many times we are so wrapped up and so caught up in actually arriving at the place that we believe God is calling us to, the destination, the actual purpose, and living it out and living in it, and being so enthralled with the actual destination that I do believe that we do not give enough value, or I should say, discount the steps, the pieces to the puzzle, the dots that are connected that allow for us to get to this place that we call destination or that we call purpose. And so the reason why I titled this message, the Lord spoke to me one day, one morning. I just woke up and he just said, read the book of Esther. And I don't know why. I wasn't studying in church. My pastor had not preached on it. I just woke up and he said, read the book of Esther. And so I read the book of Esther. The entire book is a short book. And this message is what came out of it. And so I do believe as I read this particular book, God spoke so clear and not necessarily making the point of the destination and the purpose, although that is the subject of this particular message, but what led up to the purpose of Esther's life. And so I believe that we have to start putting more emphasis and more interest in the steps that lead up to where we're headed and where we're going. The reason why I say that is if we do not respect, if we do not appreciate how we got to the place that God has called us, then how can we fully operate in the destination or the purpose that God has called us to? And so I titled this message, if it wasn't for certain things in your life, if it wasn't for that situation or that person or those circumstances, how do you know you would ever even gotten to the place that you call your purpose? And so in this particular message, we're going to unravel that. We're going to unpack that so you can see these things leading up to where God has called you to be. I believe that a lot of people are in this place. They're in this place where they're operating. I mean, they're dead smack parked into their purpose, into where God has called them. But for some reason, in some way or another, they just don't have the power. They just don't have the appreciation. They just don't have the extra step over that line to actually operate in that purpose. And one of the reasons why I believe is because we have failed to recognize the dots that were connected to get us to that place, that what God has orchestrated behind the scenes in order for us to get to that place called his purpose for our lives. And so I believe that this message would allow for the key to unlock the understanding of all the things that happen in your life. And maybe it wasn't a long time ago. Maybe it was just 2 weeks ago. But learn how to appreciate all those particular things. So when you get to the place where you are in your purpose, standing in your purpose, you would have this power, this push, this compellingness to literally do what it is that God has called you here to do and nothing else. I believe that. And so let's get into this message. And so we stopped at the fourth chapter. We started at the fourth chapter at verse 14. And so here it is, Mordecai, Esther's cousin, and we'll explain all of this, these particular positions, these roles. And here it is, he's explaining to her. He says, if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such as a time as this? So let's unpack this, but we're going to go backwards. We're going to start at the beginning, but we're going to go backwards. And so here we are. That verse explains the starting point of Esther's purpose. But I want to go back because here it is. We have the purpose. And then we go back, there's the push. And then we go back, there's the pick. Then we go back, there's the person. And then we go back, there's the plan. We go back some more, the problem. And then we go back to the beginning, the place, the platform, the point of origination. And that's where I want to start. And so we're gonna work our way forward through this message by working ourselves back through this particular text. And so I want to start at the first chapter, the place. I wrote in my Bible here, the place, the platform, point, origination, whichever one you want to use, that's what this is. And so let me explain what has taken place in this first chapter. You have King Xerxes, and he's in reign here. He's in reign over the Persian Empire, and he's reigning over 127 provinces. And so he's the man. And so in this particular Persian Empire, he decides to throw a banquet. This banquet lasted 180 days. 180 days. He had a banquet, a party for 180 days. And when that one was over, he threw another party. And I don't know how long that one lasts, but not only did he throw a party for 180 days, not only after that, he threw another party. His wife, the queen, threw a party for all of the women. And so it was just a great party. Things were good. Everything was fine. Everything was party hardy. Everybody drink as much as you drink. As a matter of fact, he made a decree. Drink as much as you want to drink. Everybody's drunk. Everybody's partying. What a great place to have a platform. What a great place to start the origination point of movement, of things shifting to get to this place of what we call purpose. And I believe in our lives today, just like this particular king, just like in Esther's life, just like in this particular time, that sometimes there's a place. Many of you can name your place. Many of you can name your point of origination. Many of you can name your platform where it all started. All of us have a starting point. All of us have a place where I can't really put my finger on it, but I know it was year 2007. It was year 1998. It was year 1971. That's when I knew something was happening. Something began to shift. I didn't know exactly what it was. I wasn't sure on what it was going to end up being. I didn't know who was doing it. I didn't know if I was going to be a part of it or not, but I just remember when this happened, when this was going on, when I heard this, when I had this conversation, when I met this person, that's when something started to shift. And so you have, in order to get to your purpose, you got to have a place, a platform, or a point of origination. And so this particular party, when you read in the first chapter, that this was a great place for something to begin to shift. See, I believe that God operates in our lives behind the scenes when everything is going good. See, we tend to think that God is at the forefront of our lives when we are blessed and things are going well, but you don't understand that God is behind the scenes working while you enjoy his blessings in the front. God is, matter of fact, this particular book, Esther, let me just give you a quick note. They didn't even want this book a part of the 66 because it does not mention God anywhere in this book. You won't find the word God in this book nowhere. However, he is so behind the scenes and so inner working everything. And we're going to unravel that later on down in the message. But this is just how God is. This is his character. that sometimes he's working behind the scenes in your life. Sometimes he's working behind the scenes. You don't see him, you don't feel him, but he's working behind the scenes. And so in this book of Esther, you will see God working behind the scenes, putting all these pieces together, connecting all the dots in order for Esther to operate in her purpose. And so if you read the first chapter, you see nothing about Esther. You see nothing about Mordecai. You see nothing about the main character of this particular book. Perhaps in your life, at a point of origination, at this place, at this platform, it had nothing necessarily to do with you. You were not the subject matter of this place, of this foundational place, but something was happening. You can feel it, you can almost sense it, smell it slightly, but something in this place, in this moment, when you met that person, when you took that job, when you changed this, when you cut this person out your life, when you cut that out your life, when you stopped doing it, something, you can feel it. Something was shifting. Something was a little bit different. And so in this particular first chapter, something is getting ready to happen. Have you ever been in that place in your life where you feel like everything is kind of okay, it's good, no problems, no reason to complain, but you just kind of sense and smell and feel something is on the rise. Something is moving. Something is getting ready to happen. I just feel it. Something major is around the corner. I just don't know what it is. It's God working behind the scenes. And so as we go through this first chapter, you have the place, the platform, and the point of origination. So let's just give you a backdrop. So they're having this party. This King Xerxes, he's having this party. Everything is going good. Everybody's drunk. Matter of fact, the Bible says they was drinking wine out of gold goblets and silver goblets, and they had all this fanfare and all this beauty. He was showing off his palace, and the one thing that he hadn't shown off yet was his queen. And so he summons by his men to bring for his queen to come. And as a matter of fact, not just come and prance in the room and let me show you off and show you how beautiful you are, but I want you to wear the crown, the queen's crown. I want to show you off. I'm king. I got this beautiful place. Everything is going good. I got enough wine to have a party for 180 days and to throw another party afterwards and for you to have your own party. But what's most important, let me show you all this beauty of mine, who I call Queen Vashti. And something happens. And so you have your point, your place, your platform, your point of origination, but then you got your problem. Then you got your problem. The queen refuses. She refuses to come to the call of the king, her husband. Oh, I don't need to tell you this. I don't need to go in details of how troubling, beyond troubling this is for this king. As a matter of fact, the Bible says, I believe in the first chapter and the second chapter, that not only was the king horribly angered at this and angered by this and so mad and so frustrated and so upset about this, that the men also said, hey, king, listen. Now, if your wife gonna do this, that means all of the wives are gonna take a cue from her and they're gonna disregard and disrespect their husbands all over the provinces. And so at this point, they created a decree, a rule, had to force the queen out. And so you got a problem. What am I saying? How does that relate to my life every day, Eric? How does that make sense to what I'm going through right here in my life? Be careful. Be careful. Because as we're going to continue to go through this particular book, be careful how you discount the problems in your life. You may not be able to see it now. I'm pretty sure Esther had no idea that this particular problem, that somehow, some way, this queen decided that she was going to refuse the summons of her husband, the king himself. Not only her husband, but the king which will cause for her to be exiled from his presence forever. That it would have something written all over it that has something to do with her. Be careful of the problems that come into your life. Be careful of the problems that may step into your family's life. Be careful of the circumstances that center themselves around you that become overwhelming. Be careful of praying them away. Be careful of discounting them. Be careful of saying how much this is destroying your life, because you never know behind the scenes how God is working and using it for your good. And so you have the place, the platform, the point of origination, and then you have the problem. How do you get to your purpose from all these particular things? There has to be a place of origination. There has to be a foundational point, a reference changing point in your life, in your circumstances, in whatever it is, wherever you are in your life, in order to uproot, in order to plant, in order for something to be uprooted to get you to a place to where some things can start moving you forward towards your purpose. And so sometimes God allows for a problem to come into your life, because if he didn't allow for the problem to take root in your life, you would have never moved. You would have never become uncomfortable. You would have never become uprooted in where you are in your comfort levels in order to get to the place. And things had to shift and move, and some things had to be problematic for your life, problematic for your finances, problematic for certain circumstances of your family in order to get you to begin to shift towards your purpose. And so you have the place, you have the platform, point of origination, then you have the problem. And so we got a problem here. You got a queen disobeying a king to the point where she lost her queenship. And so now the king is looking for a queen. You have the plan. You have the plan. So this King Xerxes, his men come to him and say, hey, listen, his wise advisors, as the Bible calls them, and he says to them, hey, listen, how about we search all the provinces, find all the fine young virgins, all the fine young women, and we're going to fix them up. We're going to bring them in front of you, and the one you choose, that'll be your queen. And the king was like, okay, cool. I'm cool with that. That sounds like a good plan. And so you have the place, the platform, the point of origination. You have the problem. Now you have the plan. Can I just tell you how this relates to us in our lives each and every day? That there is a plan that's in place. You may not have any idea that you are centered in this plan. You are at the dead smack in the middle of this plan. But there are some things, there's some people moving. There's some breakthroughs in other people's lives. There's some situations, some rules that are changing. There's a plan in place that God has his hands all into and all around, that has you at the forefront and at the center of. You may not be able to see it. He might allow you to see it. You might be able to see the little nuggets that he drops down. Maybe not. God is sovereign. He can do whatever he wants to do. So I'm not going to put him in the box of how he reveals himself to you in your life. But possibly you may not have no idea that there's a plan in place right now. Right now, you sitting somewhere frustrated, ready to quit, ready to close up your Bible, ready to stop going to church, ready to give up on faith, give up on trusting God, and you are totally unaware that there's a plan in place that's getting ready to bless your life, that's getting ready to bless what it is that you're praying for, getting ready to bless, getting ready to open the door, getting ready to move you into the place where God has you to be. Somewhere, some preacher is frustrated, sitting somewhere, and nothing is working out. He's not getting called to a church. Some pastor is trying to pastor a church. There's somebody somewhere, something that you're praying about, but you're frustrated because nothing is moving, and you don't even realize there's a plan already in motion for you. And so at this time, in this moment in chapter 2, Esther had no idea that there was a plan in place that had her written all over it. And so the advisor said to the king, let's let's search. Let's search for you a queen. And so you have a point of origination where something has to start. It has to start from somewhere in your life. It didn't start 20 years ago because it needed to start at 20 years later. There's a point of origination, a place, a platform where things are getting ready to change. And then you have a problem. There's something that comes in that unlocks something that wouldn't normally unlock itself with you. And you had to have a issue and a problem, a reason to get down on your knees, a reason to get in your word, a reason to go to church and hear the word preach and let it sink fresh in. It was a reason for you to go talk to this person. It was a reason for you to get rid of this person. A problem had to come in to unmove, to shift some things and uproot some things. And then there was a plan. But then the plan comes into play that you may not even see it, or sometimes you may see it, but it's working behind the scenes that has your name on it. Something is moving. People are shifting. Things are happening. Money is moving. Everything is moving. The plan. And then there's a person. I don't know nobody that has reached their purpose, that has gone to where God has called them to be, that has done anything that God has summoned them to do without help. And so God allows for this person to come in your life. And so in the second chapter, in verse 7, you see this man had is talking about Mordecai. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who also was called Esther. When her father and her mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. You need a person. How do I get to my purpose? How do I get to exactly what God has called me to do? You got to have a person. There's somebody that God has ordained, given authority to be your blessed connection, your blessed access, to get you, to prepare you, to take care of you, to connect you with the right path that you're supposed to be on. Be careful of how you discount people that come into your life. Be careful how you want this person to be in your life and don't want that person because they look like that, they smell like that, they talk like that, they come from that particular area, or they're that particular color. Be careful of who goes in and out of your life. Be mindful, be prayerful, asking God to show you your person. I believe all of us should be praying right now, asking God, show me my person. And not only to show me my person, but also ask God, who is the person, who is the one that I'm their person to make sure that I do my part in order to get them to their purpose. Now, let me be clear. God doesn't need us. He doesn't need us by any means, at all. But God has chosen us, his children, saved us, forgiven our sins in order for us to do the work of the Lord. And so we have a place in this thing called the kingdom, and God utilizes us sometimes in the lives of other peoples in order to get them to where they're supposed to be. And so Mordecai, her cousin, after she had lost her parents, he adopted her in his family and pretty much raised her as his daughter. And so here it is that Mordecai, being in the position that he is, working for the king, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, he has access. He has access. And so you have the place, the platform, the point of origination where things begin to shift in your life, getting you towards your purpose. And then there's a problem that comes in, because most times that when we have this place and this platform and this point of origination, we're unaware of what this means in our lives because we're locked into our comfort zone. And so God sometimes allow a situation, an issue, a problem to come into our lives to stir us up, to move us, to get us moving and move us into a different place, in a different mindset, in a different prayer life, a different processing system of how this life of ours works and how God works in our lives. And then there's a plan that begins. While God is orchestrating that problem to shift and move us, we don't see that plan that's in place. That's moving pieces, chess pieces, moving to get you where you need to be. And then while that plan, those pieces are moving and this is moving out so that can move in and that can leave a little more space over here for that. God is doing that behind the scenes, orchestrating that in our lives. Then he sends us a person. And he sends us that person that gives us that access to where we need to go and where we need to be. Sometimes there's some people in your lives. They're not in your life for your entire life. They're in your life for a brief season. They're in your life for a purpose. They're in your life to pick you up and drop you in a place where you need to be, and they're out of your lives. Be mindful, be careful of how people go in and out of your life. Don't try to hold on to them longer than what you need to. Don't try to let them go quicker than you need to, because maybe their job is not finished in their lives and they come into your life to pick you up, to guide you, to take you where you need to be. And then when that person comes in your life, they drive you to a place, and God sets a time frame for your preparation. Nobody has reached their purpose without preparation. I don't care who you are. You're not going to get there without preparation. You're not going to get there without spending some time being prepared for the purpose in which God has called you. God will never let you operate in something and not prepare you for it. If that's the God, that has happened to you, you don't serve the God that I serve. You don't serve the God of this Bible. That's not the character of God in this in this Bible. He will never send us somewhere to allow us to fail. And so here it is, Esther finds herself in preparation. It says in verse 12 of chapter 2, before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatment, 6 months with oil of myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take for the harem. I want you to understand that's some powerful verses in verse 12 through 15. I want you to understand what is being said. You're reading that, and it simply just talks about her being spiced up and smelling good and putting on makeup and all those things like that, and then giving her fine jewelry. But don't miss the point. Don't get caught up in the fanfare of the materials that they're using. Do you understand that the purpose of her being prepared, the whole purpose of her getting into this place of being chosen, because she was so fine and so beautiful, and so she was one of the young virgins that was chosen. And the reason why that she's even in this place, because the king, the plan was for her to be selected based upon how beautiful she was. What is my point? Well, first of all, the plan that you are totally unaware of, the plan that we talked about that you are totally unaware of, is in motion for you to be picked. Now, what God does is, after that plan is in motion, he sends you a person to put you in preparation, to put you in a place where you can be chosen to be prepared. And what God does is he prepares you for the plan. Oh my God, what am I saying? I'm saying the plan was for them to show the king the most finest women in that all the provinces. And so here it is, Esther is being prepared for the job. She's being prepared to be picked. She's being prepared to be picked. What am I saying? God would never prepare you for anything other than the purpose in which you have been selected. And so be careful of trying to be everything and do everything and prepare yourself for everything when you have one specific purpose. God is preparing you for that one specific purpose. Find out, pray, ask God, what is my purpose? And after you ask him, what is your purpose? Ask him, what is the preparation that is going on now that I need to be mindful of and focus all my attention on in order that I can be prepared for the specific purpose you have in my life. And so Esther was being prepared for her beauty. She was being prepared specifically with jewelry and makeup and beautiful perfume. That's what will be eye-catching. That's what will be get the king's attention in order to select her. And so when you have the place of origination, the platform, the place, you have a problem that comes in to shift some stuff. And then there's a plan that's working behind the scenes that has your name written all over it. And then God sends you the person to get you in the right path in front of the right people in order for you to be prepared. And then when you're prepared, then you're picked. Some of you are in the pick stage of your purpose. Some of you have absolutely been selected. And so in verse 19 of the second chapter, it says, even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace officer, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's directions just as she did when she lived at home. Let's go back up to verse 16. It says, Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the 7th year of his reign. And verse 17, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. Do you understand what God is preparing you for? Nobody can come in and take it from you. Nobody can step in the way and go ahead of you in your purpose. See, what you're not understanding is that all the stuff that you're going through, that you're frustrated, it seems like it's taking forever. And it seems like I don't understand what God is trying to do. And he's preparing you specifically that when it's time for you to be picked, there is, I don't care how many candidates apply for the job, you will get the job. I don't care how many women that he may have options for. You will be the one that he wants to be with and marry. I don't care how many husbands opportunities that she can choose from. You will be the one that she chooses. I don't care what it might be, how many candidates, how many people that are lined up for the same role. When God is preparing you for what it is that he has called for you to do, he prepares you in such a way and he lays it out in the path for you in such a way that no one can outdo you. No one can win it. No one can be picked over you. And so you have the point of origination. You have the place. You have the platform when this stuff begins. And then you have the problem that comes in that God allows to shift and stir some things to get you in a place where you are humbling yourselves. You're praying because this is so overwhelming. This problem has entered itself into your life and it was unexpectedly. You don't even know what it's all about, but you begin to change and pray and move some people out of your life and move some people in and change some behavior and stop sinning and choose a different course of life. And then there's a plan. While you're doing all of that, God is working behind the scenes in a plan that he has started. And then he sends you a person. And that person brings you, grabs you, takes you, leads you to the plan. And when he leads you and puts you in the plan, then you are set up to be prepared. And when you are prepared, just in the right time, just in the perfect time that God means so, you are picked. But then that's not the end. Some of us are at that stage. We're picked. We surely are picked. We know we are picked. We know God has called us and has placed this opportunity in our lives, but there's something still not allowing for us to bite. Still not allowing for us to take that next step. Still not allowing for us to actually believe and do and feel that this is God ordained. This is my moment. As in verse 14 says in the 4th chapter, for such is a time as this. We're still not believing that such as a time as this is present in our lives. And so you need a push. And so you have the platform, the place, the point of origination. Then you have the problem. Then you have the plan. And then you have the person. You have the preparation. And then you are picked. But then you still need a push. And this is where I believe that many of you who are listening to this message, this is where you are. there's something that's still standing in the way, and you need a push. And so in the text in chapter 3, there's this guy named Haman, who's the second in charge to the king, King Xerxes, and Mordecai, who's a Jew, who does not like this guy Haman. Haman doesn't like him, and he doesn't like the Jews, and Mordecai don't like Haman and his people, and he just won't respect him. He won't bow down to him like the others bow down to him. And so this particular man, the second in charge to the king, says, you know what? I know how to get you, Haman. I know you're a Jew, and I'm going to go to the king, and I'm going to get a decree. I'm going to get a edict to allow for me to assassinate all Jews, women, men, and children. And so Haman learns of this plot that's getting ready to annihilate all the Jews. Before there was a Holocaust, this would have been the Holocaust. Think about that. The reverence that we give to that time frame, the respect that we give to the Jews in our current day of that god-awful time of their people was getting ready to happen here, and would have been worse. As a matter of fact, the decree that the king did give authority to would have said to kill all of them. And this is when Mordecai, talking about a push. Sometimes God allows in the last seconds. You've been picked. You know that this is your moment. This is your time. But you just haven't stepped into the purpose, into what God is calling you to. And here it is. God allows for something to come in that pushes you over the top. I don't know about you all, but I've had some things that push me over into this ministry. I've had some people say some things to me that has pushed me over into this ministry. I've had some things not go my way, not go right. I've had some people go ahead of me that has pushed me into this calling that God has over my life. I've had some jobs to turn me down, to tell me no, that has pushed me over into this purpose that God has called over my life. And so here it is, you have a plot to annihilate all the Jews. And so that forces Mordecai to say, hold on, Esther, my dear little cousin, my dear adopted daughter, I got to share something with you. And you being who you are, in verse 14, he says, who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. You being who you are, you got to get the king's ear. You got to tell him, as the queen, in this purpose, you got picked, you got prepared. There was a plan. There was a problem. There was a point of origination. All of these pieces, all of these dots connected in order for you to get to this place so you can speak up for the Jews. As a matter of fact, Mordecai says in verse 14, if you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. But in this meantime, we all going to die, including you. You a Jew too. You're going to die. Can I just tell you that sometimes that push that you're experiencing, that nudge that's in your back, it is that serious. Because God is serious about you operating in your purpose. He's serious about you operating in the thing that he called your life to be for. And so, yes, it is that serious. And so we need a push to walk on into and operate in the purpose that God has over our lives. And so as you continue to read on the chapters, you read where Queen Esther summons the king a meeting, and she goes before him and she says on behalf of all of her Jewish people and all those things that Haman was a two-timing, double conniving, double-crossing fool. And he was getting ready to kill all the Jews, and he needed to create a decree, an edict that would allow the Jews to defend themselves. And so, long story short, if you continue to read on, which is a beautiful ending to the book of Esther, that he did that. He acknowledged his queen over his second in charge. As a matter of fact, he honored Mordecai and made him second in charge. And so the man who wanted to kill Mordecai ended up becoming murdered and impaled on the same pole that he was going to impale Mordecai on. Do you know how many things changed and shifted because Esther operated in her purpose? Do you understand that not only did she stopped from the Jews from being annihilated, but she allowed for the Jews to be able to fight back. She allowed for Mordecai to become second in command with the king. She allowed for this man who wanted to annihilate all the Jews to be dead himself, to be killed himself. When we operate in our purpose, when we actually be who God intended for us to be, when we actually say what God has called us to say, when we actually do what God has called us to do, when we actually live out the way God has called for us to live out, great things happen. Great things happen. Lives are changed. People's positions are shifted. And who would have thunk it? A young girl who just had a pretty face. Parents are deceased and dead. Who would have thought that in the beginning there was a platform, a party, this banquet, and then there was a problem. A queen decided to disregard her husband and disrespect his position and his role in her life. And it started all the dots to connect. And it started for Esther. She didn't even know that it was starting for her, but it had started to the place where she was obedient to what she was. I wonder what would have happened in your family's life if your parents were obedient to what God had called them to be. I wonder what would happen to your marriage if you were obedient to the role that God had called you to be in your marriage. I wonder what would happen to your children. What would happen to your children? What would happen to your marriage? What would happen to your family? What would happen at your job? What would happen at doing something new, at starting a business or whatever it might be? I wonder what would happen if you operated it. If you operated in what God has called you to be. I wonder who lives will be changed. I wonder what people who are sitting in misery, who are sitting in problematic situations, but their lives will be completely shifted and changed because you operated in your purpose. I wonder how many churches will grow. I wonder how many people will get saved, more importantly, if you operated in your purpose. Esther did. And so the reason why I titled this message, if it wasn't for all those things, if it wasn't for the point of origination, whatever that was, if it wasn't for the problem that was in your life, some people have completely changed their life because something traumatic drastically happened to them, and they completely changed their lives, changed their perception, their perspective on life and their spirituality and their belief in Jesus Christ. It completely changed. If it wasn't for that person that came in your life, some people might have made you mad, might have made you angry, but that's why you changed. That's why you start walking towards being prepared. If it wasn't for somebody telling you no and rejecting you, you wouldn't have gone back to college and prepared yourself. And it wasn't for you getting prepared and you might have been frustrated and it taking so long and no one is noticing you, no one is seeing you, no one even respect what you've done and your credentials and all of those things. You were being prepared. And it wasn't for you being picked. God does the picking, not people. And if it wasn't for that last push, you wouldn't have been at your purpose. Thank you, Esther, for showing us how when you operate in your purpose, things change. Thank you to the book of Esther for showing us God. Thank you. Thank you, God, for showing us in the book of Esther how you operate behind the scenes. Thank you. If it wasn't for those things, you wouldn't have done your purpose. So now that you're at your purpose and all those things are aligned and they all happen for a reason, what are you going to do with it?